we need any more. All right. Clean and speak. I know. You have that. I have my spare bedroom behind me. You're on mute, so I can't hear you. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Doing it.
Okay. There we go.
I'm still, you hear me?
I still can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Still muted.
Okay, now we're good. Good.
So good afternoon and welcome to another edition of YWCA Hartford Region's Live Lunch and Learn series. My name is Adrienne Cochrane, and we have an incredibly special guest today that's joining us live on Facebook. So on June 25th of 2019, Governor Ned Lamont signed Paid Family Medical Leave Act law in Connecticut, establishing the Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Authority. Then on January 23rd of this year, 2020, Governor Lamont announced that Andrea Barton Reeves would become the authority's first chief executive officer. And today we welcome Andrea Barton Reeves. Hi, Andrea, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, it's exciting to have you join us. This is timely information and important information. And so we will jump right in.
Sure.
I want to acknowledge, though, that you are also the vice chair of the YWCA Hartford Region Board of Directors. And certainly you're the immediate past CEO of HARC. So
yes,
full start. So I'm going to just jump in now, okay?
Sure, yeah.
So you've had a phenomenally successful career, certainly to this point. You've practiced law, been a litigator, superb litigator, I'm told. You have represented and advocated for the underserved in much of your career, and you are mission dedicated. So can you please tell us how that wonderful background, all that you've done to this point, talk to us a little bit about starting your career as a civil litigator in New York City, and then coming to Connecticut and where you are now.
Sure. So I'm a Jersey girl, as I describe myself. I grew up in New Jersey. I went to Rutgers, the school that I still love and I have a lot of admiration for. And then I went to New York Law School in New York City, a fabulous, small, probably underrated institution that really prepares you to be a lawyer. It just immerses you into the real world. And so I had a fabulous experience there. And from there, I was able to go and work at one of the cities and actually the world's largest law firms as a litigator for a while. So that was exciting. I learned a lot. Then I had an opportunity to move to Connecticut with my husband, who's also a practicing attorney. So we decided that we would relocate here, and he had a job here, I had a job here. So we decided to come together. And then from there, I did work at a large firm in Connecticut. I then had my own practice for almost close to 9 years. Coinciding with my son's birth, I decided that it would be better if I could spend some time with him to help him just navigate those early parts of his life. But then I dedicated my practice almost exclusively to representing children who were part of either the child protection or delinquency system, and some parents who really were struggling with finding good representation as they were trying to bring their families back together. So I did that for quite some time, also working at Lawyers for Children America, training other attorneys to do similar work. So it was challenging, it was exciting, but that's what drives me, is that mission to really help people who need someone who is completely dedicated to them and will do their best for them. And so it was a perfect fit for me. And then, and then I went on to work at Hark for 10 years, another opportunity to do extraordinary work at a place that's still home and family to me. And then in January, I was able to come to the authority to continue what I believe was my life's work, which is mission-based, helping people live better lives.
And you and I are well known to each other, so I know you like the challenge, and so you've jumped into a very exciting one.
Yeah.
So in its simplest terms, we want people to understand, what is paid family medical leave? What does that mean in Connecticut? What are the kind of basic mechanics of that? And tell us a little bit about how the authority was even established.
Sure. So the authority was established statutorily. And so the statute that you referred to in the beginning of your remarks that created paid family medical leave also created an authority to administer that. And so that's what I run. And know the statute, I've probably read it more times than I think the people who created it at this point. Probably just
I
could
tell some stories, but I won't.
Yeah, exactly. I like to read. Let's just put it that way. I'm a reader. We'll leave it at that. So I came to the authority is the institution that manages paid family and medical leave. And what it is, it's an opportunity for employees to get paid while they're out taking care of their families for up to 12 weeks if you are caring for yourself or a family member, and up to 14 weeks if your leave is related to pregnancy and there's a complication, or as the statute says, an incapacitation that's associated with pregnancy. We all know what the stories are. We've heard them all about being out on leave and really trying to cobble together as much as you can enough paid leave so that you're not left financially vulnerable so you can take care of your family. And how many years have we been struggling with this idea of either we go to work when we're sick, or we go to work when someone who we love is sick because we won't get paid. And we see that really now writ large in the environment in which we find ourselves.
Absolutely.
So paid family and medical leave really helps to resolve some of those issues. So if you meet the statutory definition of the number of months that you've worked, which are 3 months, if you've made about $2,300 and you have a qualifying condition, you would be eligible to apply for leave, and there would be a determination as to whether or not you qualify, and then you would be able to take your leave and not have to worry about how you're going to take care of your family financially while you're taking care of your family physically and emotionally.
Absolutely. And it's so important, and particularly as we look at paid family medical leave against the drop of the pandemic, we now find ourselves sort of ensconced in. So, Andrea, we know that Connecticut is the 8th state. There are now 8 states and the District of Columbia to have passed similar legislation. But one of the things we tout in Connecticut is that we have one of the most comprehensive and expansive family leave laws. And so please talk, part of what drives us to that conclusion is that our law expands considerably the definition of what is considered family. Could you please talk about what the definition of family is in Connecticut's law and why that's important?
I actually have a slide if you have just a moment. Let me go to that one. And I'm at a certain age, so I need these glasses. So let me,
Aren't we all?
So let me get that slide up here for you. Give me a moment and then I will share it. Okay, let's see, go back here. Let me share my screen. Okay. Here we go. All right. So I hope everyone can see this. So here are the people that you can care for with respect to family. So you can take time off to care for your spouse, a child, a parent, a grandparent, a sibling, and anybody who is related, who you believe is related to you by blood or is the equivalent of a family member. So that is a very expansive definition. So we've all grown up with the aunties who live next door, you know, the grandma, you know, who wasn't necessarily our grandma by blood or connection, but they help make us who we are, right? They were an essential part of our family. and our biological family probably considered them family. That's the kind of people we're talking about. It was to the equivalent of a family member. So generally, while we don't have a specific definition of it, those are the types of relationships that we're looking at for family, because we recognize that families are created in so many different ways. So to limit that to what we traditionally understand to be family really limits it doesn't honor what family truly means in our society.
That's right.
And it really limits what people want to do for those who had been family to them. So
I could agree with you more.
Yeah.
And if we pay attention to that very last one, any individual related to you by blood or any individual who's the equivalent family
That's
member.
right.
That's that auntie that
That's
wasn't
right.
biologically or by marriage related
Yes.
person that may have actually raised you.
That's exactly right. Okay,
really
so I will
important.
come back. There we go. Yeah.
Really important. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There is a fair amount of confusion, and you and I have chatted about this a bit, that people will say, well, wait a second, why did we need this whole paid family medical leave thing? We don't have FMLA. What's the difference? Why?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the federal and the state? And what is this going to do for me that I already have? Could you talk a little bit about what FMLA is?
Yes.
It is not, and then how paid family leave is different.
All right, so I will warn our audience that this is a little complicated and it'll take me more than a minute. So, but I will walk through it. All right. So prior to the passage of this statute, our state had family medical leave, and there's also a federal corollary to that leave. So states can offer the same thing that the federal government can offer. It can offer more, but it can never offer less. So we had a policy that basically mirrored the federal leave. That meant that you had to work for your employer for a year, and you had to work at least 1,250 hours for that employer for that period of time. The state family medical leave offered the same thing. You had to work for your employer for a year. You had to work 1,250 hours. We offered 16 weeks of pay under the state statute. 16 weeks of leave under the state statute. The federal offered 12 weeks of leave. The game changer in paid family leave, and it's also the statute also changes the state leave, whether that's paid or not, and I'll explain that because that's a little confusing, is now whether you have paid leave or you have unpaid leave, you now only have to work for your employer for 3 months, and you have to make about $2,300. It's $2,325 in order for you now to qualify for leave. So here's the difference. You can work for an employer for, let's say, a month or so. And you may go to that employer and say, I need leave. And the employer may say to you, well, you don't quite qualify yet because you've not been here for 3 months. Or maybe you've worked there for 3 months and you've earned $2,325, but you haven't earned any time off. So the employer can say to you, you can take the time, but I can't pay you for that time because you haven't accrued enough vacation and sick and whatever kind of time you can have. So under those circumstances, you could go over to the authority and if you've met those criteria and you have a qualifying circumstance, you're having surgery, you're having a baby, whatever those circumstances might be, and then you can get paid for that. So the difference here, though, is that if you've worked fewer than those 3 months, you don't necessarily have what we call job protection. So that's what and that's only on the employer side. If you come to the authority, what we can guarantee you, if you meet the qualifications, is that you will get paid. I want to be really clear about this. The authority doesn't offer paid guaranteed job security. That sits on the employer side of it. Okay. And then but then the federal leave, the one I talked about earlier, which is you have to work there a year, 1,250 hours, that hasn't gone away. That's still the same. So now you've got this choice between the federal leave, the state leave, and then paid leave. So it's, you have to really,
clear as mud. Got it. Everybody got it?
There's a lot, right? And so, but part of our job at the authority is to try to make these things clear for people. So we're working on that marketing and that messaging because it can be very confusing. What we hope will happen is that employers will have the opportunity to lay out those options for their employees, and we're trying to make that as easy as we can for them so that they can choose the one that works best for that particular life decision they need to make at that time.
Well, I think you've done a good job of differentiating it. And of course, this isn't anything that anyone is going to get in one single link.
No,
And we know that there will be, as you've just said,
right.
materials and listening sessions, et cetera, before
Yes,
a very key date. On January 1st of 2021,
yes.
peers are going to begin
Yeah,
withholding. That means taking money out of our checks, people.
that's correct. Yeah,
Remitting those program contributions.
yes.
1 year later, on January 1st of 2022, those
Hmm.
employees that you just talked about can actually start taking paid family medical leave. When Governor Lamont signed this act into law, he said,
Hmm.
this is a big victory for families.
Yes. In very much the ways that I've outlined, that families for a long time have been making some very difficult decisions about getting paid, going to work, or caring for people that they love who are sick, or even caring for themselves. There are, and having worked the 10 years at Hark, I can tell you all kinds of stories about uh, people who really had to make some really difficult decisions about their own lives and their own families because they hadn't accrued enough time, or they couldn't get paid, but they needed to be out for 4 weeks for their own health or to take care of, somebody that they love. This is why paid family medical leave is such a game changer, because now it takes away that terrible tension that that many of us have had to experience about what to do when we're confronted with having to care for someone we love.
Yes.
And that caring includes making sure there's still food on the table while you're making sure that they get healthy and strong.
That's right. That is
Right.
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So that's the difference.
Thank you. And so you have spoken about this a little, but I'll ask you to give us just a little more detail. Talking
Sure.
about how this new law is going to actually affect employers, and what, if any, challenges do you see at this point? What should
Yeah.
employers expect once the authority is stood up and everything is up and running? What can
Right.
employers expect?
So employers can expect, and we're working on this right now as we speak with partners that we've engaged, to have an enjoyable experience to the extent that they can when they come to the authority's website and they're registering and making their contributions on behalf of their employees. We're really trying to design a website and a system that is easy to navigate, it's user-friendly, a place where you can ask questions and have questions answered. So what will happen is that employers will have to internally identify those employees that they need to take contributions from, which in most cases it's virtually everyone. They will have to aggregate that. Most larger employers are doing that through their payroll companies and then remit that payment to the authority. All of that money goes into a trust fund, and that trust fund is managed by the Office of the Treasurer. So there's a separate account that money will go into. It is a bank account that is overseen by the Office of the Treasurer with an extra layer of oversight by the Office of the State Controller. And then we at the authority then will be making the benefits payments from those resources.
Okay. And I want to remind our viewers who have joined us on Facebook Live that if you have any questions, please post them and we will do everything we can to get to them. And I'm sure that Andrea will be happy to answer them in the time that we have remaining. And if you're just, and you don't know, my special guest today is Andrea Barton Reeves, who is the first CEO of the Paid Family Medical Leave and Insurance Authority. That's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. May I add just a little bit to the answer that I just
Absolutely.
gave around employers? I personally have a particular sensitivity to small employers who had never really been subject to family and medical leave prior to this time. So those that had so the threshold was 75, so 74 employees or fewer. This is an entirely new world. And I have such a deep appreciation for what that means and the anxiety that can create. Am I going to get it right? How am I going to be penalized? How do I make those calculations? How does all of that work? So we're now, as we sit here, working with our partners to make sure that employers of every size have as much support as they need to make that process work for them. So I do realize that it is an entirely new process for many, many employers in the state. And we're going to try to make it work the best we can for them.
Thank you. So I'm going just a tiny bit personal now. You know,
Sure.
Hard worker, a very dedicated worker. I don't know. I think I heard somewhere you may have read all of the other states. You'd read all of their laws.
I did.
Before you started the job. You know?
I did, yes.
We know that
never lived that down.
But it's so consistent with your work ethic and your dedication to making sure that you were coming into a position that you were as well versed as you could be. And not only what needed to happen in Connecticut, but what was going on in other states. So this is a little bit about balance. That's something that, I think we as professionals, and certainly we as women, often have a very difficult time. And how do you balance it all? You want to be good at your work. You also need to be able to be good at being, a member of your own family, and then taking some time even for self. So how do you look at, and how have you been able to this point, reading all these statutes, et cetera, to balance the work that must be done so that this authority is stood up on schedule?
Yeah.
And then practicing some self-care in that process.
Right. So I come from a Guyanese family, so West Indian family, lots of Bahamas, Trinidad, Tobago. My family just is all. So this idea of working very hard is almost ingrained in my DNA. There's just lazy was not a word that anybody used in our home. Absolutely. And I, grew up with two people and an extended family where hard work was really just the norm. So it is just part of who I am. But I do realize that a balance is important. So I have a daily routine that I follow, that I get up every morning. I exercise 6 days a week. I usually just take Sundays off. I have a particularly a way of eating that really gives me the energy that I need. I do make sure that I have boundaries around the time that I spend with my family, because that's extremely important to me. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour, I'm from New Jersey. So that usually means, a 2.5 hour car ride to go see more people that I love. And I also have a really strong family here in Connecticut. I've been here almost 20 years, and I'm so grateful to be surrounded by this tribe, especially of extraordinary women who hold me up and lift me up and pray for me and do all the things that I need to help me be who I am and help me to continue to get better at what I do. So I draw on all of that in order to be able to be better for the people who I know are depending on me to make this work. And I am not afraid to ask for help, because you cannot possibly do all of this on your own. And I like to have good relationships with people, even when you can get angry and frustrated and things don't quite go your way. The question I always ask, and I actually had a conversation like this morning: what could I have done better so it could have unfolded differently, so that I can learn. Even if in my head I'm feeling like I'm totally right.
I'm right and they're wrong, but we're not on that right now, right?
We're not on that, right? But I know that, standing in that place of stubbornness is not going to get me to a place of reconciliation and growth. So it's really better for me to own that and say, what could I have done better? And then we move forward.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much. So we know that there are employers that are concerned about the law and what it's going to mean. How have you thought about addressing those concerns?
Mm-hmm. A little bit in the same way that I had articulated earlier, we partnered with an IT company that is not just building a technical solution. They are very user-focused in the work they're doing, because that was something that I really insisted upon. Understanding and knowing that there, as I said before, especially the smaller employers who are saying, look, not only do I have to now figure out how to collect these contributions, get them to where I need to go. I don't even understand what happens if I don't do this the right way. And then I have to figure out what's going to happen with this person that's going to be gone for 12 weeks, because I've heard that as well, because you can take up to 12 to 14 weeks. What if they make more in benefits than they would getting paid? Maybe they won't have an incentive to come back. And I understand and I hear all of those concerns, but part of my response is also, you've already been managing some of this, right? This won't be the first time that people will be taking leave and going, and you having to figure out what's going to happen with their work when they go. What we're trying to do is to say to you, you don't have to make those decisions about how that person is going to get paid and how they're going to survive while you're gone, while they're away from your workplace. In fact, with that level of security, we're hoping that you and they will now feel like, okay, I don't have to worry about, coming back too early and then having to go out again and having interruptions in how they're working, that they can be out, they can get paid, and they can come back and be even a stronger part of your workforce after that. That's what we're really looking for.
Absolutely.
And that, I think, is true for employees at every size organization, every level. I am in no way making light of how different this is in the way that we're doing business in the state of Connecticut. I also, though, know that it is the wave that is going across our country, and even in the midst of our current pandemic, we've seen the federal government respond and say there has to be some relief for people who are working and need to make this balance happen.
Absolutely.
So Connecticut was first to recognize that. We've watched the federal government do that in some contexts around Corona, but this is the direction in which we're going. And so at the authority, we're going to be doing the best that we can to hear employers, to acknowledge what they're saying, to validate their concerns, and to help them work through those solutions. That's really our job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So in terms of equalizing the process for everyone, do you see this as a great opportunity to make this law and how it is administered as an equalizer in terms of the process for everyone?
I do. The statute itself speaks very clearly and very directly to how certain things should happen, and partnerships that the authority itself needs to make in order to make things easier for employers. So we are partnering with the Department of Revenue Services and the Department of Insurance and the Department of Labor to the extent that we can gather information that employers are already providing to those three agencies and use those as we create a system for employers to use, so they don't have to go to a lot of different places in order to do what they need to do. So that in that way, I think it makes it easier for the larger employers that have the resources to work through the details, and it also makes it easier for the smaller employers and let's not forget sole proprietors. Absolutely. And those who are self-employed, right? A very, very important part of and segment of our community and our employer community, and we're working to make sure that they have the support that they need as well. And it also means that it won't necessarily matter which employer you're working for, or except for the 3 months, how long you've been there. That's where the equalizing part comes in. So the statute says 3 months, 4 or 5 quarters, $2,350, you're eligible to apply for benefits. And that applies to everyone now. So now every employer doesn't have to have the angst of, well, can I give this person leave and not give that person leave? Everyone is eligible for it, as long as they meet those criteria. And I think it gives a lot of employees some hope and some support. And hopefully we can help employers implement that in a way that isn't too burdensome for them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So speaking of burdens, and we've talked a bit about the pandemic, and we are now, and of course, on the 20th, but yesterday, I guess we began with the reopening of the official reopening of the state, Connecticut.
Yeah.
What is your assessment of reopening during this COVID-19 pandemic? How do you think that this will affect paid family medical leave going forward?
I think that what I've noticed and the experience I've had in the not quite 3 months I've had this role is
that all it's been?
That's all it's been. I just started on March 2nd. It hasn't even been 3 months. It hasn't even been 3 months yet. Is that it has outlined the need for support for families who are working and trying to balance bringing home enough money to take care of their families and taking care of those who are sick at the same time. I find that and I've received a few calls, not very many, but a few calls and a couple of emails from people asking whether or not the authority has been stood up yet,
Yeah.
because because they're looking for other opportunities to bring income into their homes, especially since we know that departments of labor across the country have just been inundated with unemployment claims, and we know the kind of the fallout from that in terms of people and their need for income and resources. So that's, from that perspective, I've seen that happen. I think it has solidified and fortified the need for paid family and medical leave. I've certainly heard that from all parts of the state, and it's really, if I didn't have it before, it has increased and I think I'll use that word again. I think solidified my sense of urgency in getting the agency stood up and done well.
Yes.
So that's what I've really been working on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, to make it a little more personal, because I think you have had experiences that makes this very personal to each of us.
Yeah.
You were quite successful in your during your tenure as CEO at HARC. Certainly you had a board that did not want you to leave. And I know it was difficult for you to make a decision at this point in your career. Is there a particular aha moment? Was there some circumstance that sort of helped you think about why this was something important for you to do at this point?
Yeah.
Something that you feel like sharing?
Yeah, there was. So there were two things. I think spending the decade that I spent at HARC, and I loved the people that I worked with. And so in the times when they were really in need and needed to be with their families, and we only could offer as much leave as they had earned, that was always heartbreaking for me. And really always one of the most difficult decisions that I had to make is to know that I was sending someone out into the world who needed the leave. They needed to recover from their own illness or help a family member, but they would only be paid for 3 of the 9 weeks that they'd be out. And I would always wonder, like, how are they going to pay their rent and pay for childcare and buy food in those other 6 weeks that they won't have any income from work? And many of them work multiple jobs too. Yes. And that was always, and so they couldn't work any of those, so they had no income, and it really used to sometimes keep me up at night. And then about 3 years ago, my dad also became very, very ill. He lived in Florida, and I, for a lot of reasons in our family, became the person who was his primary coordinator of his supports. And so I had to, fly back and forth to Florida all the time. I had to take a lot of time off of work. As you said, I had an incredible board. They were really, really supportive, but it made me really reflect on what if I didn't have the resources to do this? What if I could not just take 2 or 3 weeks off at a time and not really be that concerned about how I was going to get paid? Because I have the good fortune of earning a decent living and living with a partner who does, and having savings and all of those things that I know are not things that many people have. And I'm so grateful for all of those blessings, but I'm also acutely aware that I am in the minority around that. Yes. Acutely aware. So when I had the opportunity, having had that personal experience, to say, wait a minute, can I make this possible for the state of Connecticut? Knowing what I've experienced personally and knowing what the journey I've walked with the people that I worked with and really cared for, to me, it was not a difficult decision. Because I work and I live in a place of helping other people. That is what I do. I do mission work. It is my life. It's probably my calling, as some people would say it. So when I had a chance to transition from the calling of supporting people with intellectual disabilities and their families to a higher calling of helping people live with dignity and inclusion in their lives by providing some means of financial support, that was not a difficult decision for me to make at all. And that's why.
I can understand that. And I know at that time you and I talked because I had a similar experience.
Yes.
Yes. I lost my father very quickly to pancreatic cancer the day after Thanksgiving. And then he died February 1st. So what you described, and being in a situation where, and it was in the South, he's in a totally different being so fortunate to work for an organization. There was no paid family medical leave.
Right.
It was an organization of less than 50 people, so you really didn't have FMLA. But to work with a board that understood the importance of that and never once made me feel guilty or made me feel that I was being negligent in my duties during that time. And so you and I, again, having had very similar experience,
Yes.
but
Yes.
recognizing and still asking that question, what if you worked for someone who was not that understanding, not only
Correct.
on the back end of the organization that I was going to be leaving, but coming even to the YWCA.
That's right.
That caused a delay in my beginning this position and coming to a board that and put no pressure, that understood exactly what was going on. Everyone doesn't have that experience. And so when we were talking
That's
about
right.
what equalizes this
Yes.
for everyone, then just in case you don't work for an organization that understands, you'll have aging parents, you'll have other relatives, there will be situations or things that you will have to take care of. It's not just about having giving birth, a beautiful thing, but there are many other things that happen that will create situations where people have to be aware.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that's it's deeply personal and it's
absolutely. That's my
hard
pleasure.
to talk about, but I think it helps people understand. It really personalizes the situation to say that this is why it's important.
Right.
So I think that you have some other slides and perhaps some other information you might want to share, some other things you may want to talk about. Again,
yes.
To Facebook Live viewers, if you have questions, please kindly send those and we will try to get them answered.
All right. So thank you. I am just going to walk through this presentation that we put together today, just so people can get a very brief overview of what we're doing at the authority. So let me, I chose these pictures. I really feel that to a certain extent, they are a representation of all of the families that we will be supporting through the Paid Family and Medical Leave Authority, including our military families and our families of parents of the same gender and multi-generational families. So we see a very broad mix of people that we will be supporting. So Connecticut is one of only 8 states that offer some form of paid family medical leave. It's known as with different names in different states, but ours, as I mentioned earlier, is really one of the most expansive in the country and has a very low threshold for qualifying at 3 months of work and earning about $2,300 in wages in the last 4 of the 5 quarters. Then you can become eligible to apply for benefits. So you had gone through some of these very important dates here. So the statute was passed in June of last year and signed into law. In January 1, the employers will begin to withhold and remitting program contributions to those accounts that I spoke of. And then in January of 2022, covered employees can begin making applications for paid family and medical leave. So how much is offered? It's up to 12 weeks and a 12-month time period, and up to 14 weeks for incapacitation due to pregnancy-related health conditions. So I'll know I'll get lots of questions about incapacitation. That is statutory language. That is not something I made up.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Like, what do you mean? Was that what is having a child in incapacity? Okay, no. That is right. It's directly out of the statute. I'm not disparaging pregnancy. I want everyone to know that. Okay, so not at all. And then here are some of the circumstances under which you would pay for leave. It'd be your own serious health condition or for an ill family member, to bond with a child that is new to your family through birth or adoption or foster care. We want to recognize that families are created in many different ways. A hardship in your family because someone's been called to serve our country to active duty. Or also, if you want to serve as an organ donor or a bone marrow donor to save another person's life. So that is one of the ways in which this statute is so expansive as compared to others in other states. So we're very, very proud of that. And we spoke before of what's considered family under the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act. And again, there's a very expansive definition of family, recognizing that families are created in many, many ways. And we want to make sure that people can have the leave they need in order to support the people that they love. It also allows you to take leave under the Connecticut Family Violence Leave Law. And this is critical. We've heard, especially since we've all recently been sheltering in place, the number of people and the number of domestic violence arrests and incidents that there are, this is very real. And people need leave in order to address the concerns that are raised when you are a victim of domestic violence. And so the law clearly recognizes that and lists it as an option for you to be able to take leave. We spoke a little bit about how it's funded, which is 0.5% of all wages. The statute does not require it to go any higher than that. So when people to know that. And all of the money goes into a fund that is managed by the Office of the Treasurer, so that it is in a place where all of our money is really being managed and properly invested.
So Andrea, just a second, go back to that just for a minute.
Yes.
The 1/2 of
1%
is the amount being withheld from the employee paychecks, and that withholding will be by the employers.
That's right. That's right. So the
employee funded, not employer.
Yes. So what is unique about our paid family and medical leave program is that it is completely employee funded. In some states, there is a division of the contributions between employers and employees. Some are all employer funded, but in our state, it's all employee funded. And it's through that lens that we are creating a very user-focused experience and transparency and accountability. Because as I've said to people over the last 2.5 months, as we've been gathering resources to stand up the authority, this is people's paycheck money, right? And I know how serious I am about my paycheck money. And I know that.
Okay, well, you walk into HR and say, "No,
right.
what is this?"
That's right. So, and I know how serious I am about that, because we know that our resources are precious. I will never say that they're scarce. They are precious. And I having worked with people who are working 2 and 3 jobs, you really want to make sure that your money is used appropriately. So we're building the authority knowing that we have the highest level of accountability to everyone who is contributing to that fund with their hard-earned money. So that, I think, thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's important. And this is really my last slide, just again, to demonstrate how important and how family-focused this is. It is leave for you, for your family. It's leave to be a parent. It's leave to take care of a parent. It's leave for military heroes. It really is leave for your life. And that is paid family and medical leave.
That's a wonderful summary. Thank you. So there is a question for you.
Okay.
The question is, has COVID made the authority think about a need to perhaps expedite the timeline in terms of standing this thing up and implementing?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't.
All right. Yes, it has, but practically, that is more challenging to do. It is literally one of these things that's easier said than done. The urgency of standing up the authorities feels even greater in the current environment in which we're in. But it is funded, as I just mentioned, by 0.5% of everyone's pay. We are in the midst of a pandemic and with many, many people being unemployed right now. And there isn't another resource with which to fund the authorities so that benefits could be paid. So while I do feel that great sense of urgency, there's no practical way that I could stand it up in a time frame that would be faster than we've already set. With that said, there's not an expectation that January 1st date is going to be a different date. Let me just put it this way. I am still moving as if that date is static, because I know how important it is, that January of 2021 and the January of 2022, and I'm running as fast as I can with the most competent people to make sure that we hit those deadlines.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. So just in terms of practically speaking, to really summarize, if you're talking to, regardless of who the audience is, and the major points that you would want them to walk away from this conversation, understanding about what this legislation is and what it is not, what would those be?
It is an opportunity for employers to get support around having people be able to take leave without having to worry about what's going to happen to them or their jobs or their families. So that's from the employer perspective. It's also an opportunity to allow the authority to be a partner with you as you navigate this. And for many employers, as I said, small employers for the first time. For employees, they'll tell you they've been doing this for a long time with a lot of anxiety. And as I mentioned, my own personal circumstances, And having that protection and that cushion is so important. So I think that's why this statute is a game changer. The need for it has always existed. And that's why family medical leave at the federal level has existed for well over 20 years. Even way back then, there was a recognition that people needed a way to balance their lives and their work and their families. Now, an evolution of that recognition is people need to get paid for that during that time too, because just having the time is not necessarily enough. So this statute addresses both of those things, the time and financial support and security, so that people can really take care of themselves and their families in the way that they can, fully direct their attention there, so that when they return to work, they can fully direct their attention back to their employer, because they've been able to do what they need to do with their families without worry or concern. I'm very proud of this statute. I know that many people can point to it, and they can point to its weaknesses and its failures and the places where it probably needs changing. And as I said to a colleague recently, I have yet to encounter a statute that is perfect.
Anything that's perfect.
Anything, any of them. I clearly recognize that, it will say in its current state, there might be some points of confusion there, and even there might be some issues of its very existence. But it is the law of our land now. And in our current environment, we can see how deep the need is for people to be able to have that support so that they can work and live with dignity.
Absolutely.
To be able to take care of their families with dignity. And that is what I'm focused on, is the dignified experience for employers and for employees. And that is our guiding light, our North Star at the authority.
That is so very well said. So there is a big old shout out. The Campaign for Paid Family Leave gave a big shout out to you personally, Andrea.
Oh, that's very kind.
YWCA Hartford Region, and we appreciate that. And there's so many that we could thank. You can get yourself in trouble when you start thanking people and forget about somebody.
Yes.
But there's a shout out. I think I'd be terribly remiss if I didn't make to Quelf. And I think our sisters, I hope are listening. They certainly have been with us every step of the way, and certainly were great drivers in getting this legislation passed. I think it took something like 5 years or something to get it through. So thank you so much, Campaign for Paid Family Leave.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Yeah, we do. Thank you.
Yeah.
As we come sort of toward the end of this, you mentioned a couple of things I'd like to ask you to just expound upon just a bit more.
Sure.
One is you talked about job protection. So this idea that if I leave my job and I'm at the time that I take this leave, I'm in X position.
Right.
To have the sense that when I come back, that I necessarily am guaranteed X, but I am guaranteed something. Could you kind of help people understand maybe how that will impact them, or what they should be thinking about or considering at the time that they take?
Yes. So it's really understanding the distinction between what the authority provides in terms of paid leave and job protection. So job protection lies with your employer. And the authority is the place where you go to get paid for the leave that you're taking. And as I said, so the statute now reads, you're working 3 months, you make $2,350. You should check with the employer, who we will now be educating around this around job protection in the statute, about your specific job protections under your circumstances. The authority does not provide job protection. We only provide compensation when you take leave. And that compensation is, using the example I used earlier, could be that you've worked 3 months, you've earned the amount of money that you're supposed to earn in order to qualify for paid family and medical leave, but you don't have enough time to have all of that leave paid to you. You can then go to the authority and get paid for, and you can apply to get paid for that time. But there is, as the statute exists, that job protection is not part of what we offer. You would really have to go to your employer, because job protection essentially sits under the federal statute as well. So talk to your HR people, make sure you have a clear understanding of what job protection looks like, make sure you've met those qualifications, and have those discussions regularly so that you're fully informed with the decisions that you make about what kind of leave you'll be taking.
Excellent. So just between you and I,
yes, because there's no one else listening.
There's absolutely nobody listening.
No one else is listening right now. Right?
No one will ever know, I promise.
Okay.
Is there anything in particular that maybe keeps you awake other than reading all the other statutes and all studying and reading and perfecting everything that that you do? Is there, what challenges really begin to occur to you? What things have you begun to think about, or do you see to say, I need to figure out a solution to this, or we need to work together to figure out how to overcome this?
Yeah. I want to make sure that employers in particular, and those are the ones I'm focusing on as I build the first phase of the authority, have the resources and the support that they need so they don't feel that participating in this plan is a struggle. I have been using the phrase that we have a number of reluctant adopters of the statute, and I understand it, but it is, as I said earlier, it is the law of the land. But I don't want to minimize that reluctance, because it comes from a genuine place of concern. It really does. And I want to acknowledge that and respect that. So part of what keeps me up is making sure that I find a way to communicate with those employers and connect with them that in a way that's meaningful for them and helps to solve their problems. I may never allay their concerns about it, because their concerns may be the fundamental disagreement that the statute should exist or not. There's nothing that we can really do about that. But since it does, I really want to make sure that we give them the best experience so that they can at least adhere to it in a way that isn't particularly burdensome to them. On the employee side, I want them to feel that their 0.5% that they contribute to the fund is well managed, that they don't have any concerns about the transparency in which you're using those resources, and when they need it, they can get to it in a way that is compassionate, caring, and worry-free. So we're working with the premise that when you pick up the phone or you go down to the website and all these things will be available, there's a person on the other side of that is saying to you, how can we help you? What's going on in your life right now that we can help make just a little bit easier by not making this a huge hassle, by not feeling like when you call me at the authority, you're doing me a favor instead of me providing support so that you can get what you need so that you can move on to the reason why you called us in the first place. That's what I'm looking for. And
I know that you are building your team of excellence to join you in this work.
That's right.
Interim, before you're able to get other staff onboarded, where can people go? Who might they reach out to with any questions or concerns even that they may have?
Yeah. So right now it's just me, right? And people have been finding me, so
I'm sure.
We will have our goal is to have our website stood up by August 1. So we are working very, very quickly to build it. So there on the Department of Administrative Services website, there is a link to the Paid Family and Medical Leave Authority. And that's a place where you can go. You can see the minutes of our meetings. There's other places you can go. If people really feel that they want to email me directly, they can do that. And that's andrea.reeves@ct.gov.
One more time.
Andrea.reeves, R-E-E-V as in Victor, E-S, @ct.gov. So we wanted also, this is another example, we didn't want to make up some other kind of email address that people had to memorize. We just adopted the state ct.gov because we know lots of employers and some employees are already using that to communicate with people in the state. Although we're an independent agency, we recognize that we just want to make it easier for people.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
There is finally a sort of community outreach end of this and some conversation around, I call it a listening tour. Maybe it's more of an explanatory tour to make sure that you're in the community or in the places where people will be found who are going to be interested in hearing perhaps a little more in depth or may have individual questions. When do you foresee perhaps being able to begin that type of process?
Well, Adrienne, it's funny you should say that because this is actually the debut of that tour. So I'm very, very excited, very excited to have our first webinar with the YWCA Hartford Region. We know that you've been a great partner through all of this, and the work that you do for women and girls and eliminating racism is right in line with the underlying premise of why paid family medical leave was created in the first place. Recognizing that families need support, and it's in alignment with the mission of the YW. We are actually putting together an entire array of webinars that will be held, and we're hoping to publish that schedule probably in the next 3 weeks or so. We're still putting that together, where there will be larger audiences and more people. It'll be quite some time till any of us can meet in person, so we really are working towards getting those webinars going. We actually will be having one on, I don't want to miss, we'll post the date somewhere. I'll make sure I do that right. We'll have one, I'll just say early June. We'll be doing one in early June in partnership with Quell and all of the advocates that helped get it passed. And we will be doing one with the Metro Hartford Alliance in mid to late June as well. So we're working our way around the state so that we can make sure that we speak to all of our constituents, meeting with boards with chambers of commerce, and as I mentioned before, the equivalent of the Metro Hartford Alliance around the state, CBIA. We're hoping to partner with a lot of people so that we can get the word out.
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to partnering further with you and bringing you to the SOAR Monday room at the YWCA Hartford for one of our fabulous Community Matters. And speaking of that, on next Thursday, May 28th at noon, we have our next entry in our Community Matters series. Did you know that, Andrea?
I did know that. Yes, I heard that somewhere.
That is our Melinda Johnson, who's our Director of Community Engagement and Advocacy, is actually going to be hosting that with a great panel of individuals. Oh, we're
back.
Yes, we're back. Just a little commercial break or something, right?
I know.
Even Facebook Live gets tired.
That's right.
But on May 28th, starting at noon, Melinda Johnson, our Director of Community Engagement and Advocacy, is going to be hosting a wonderful, amazing panel of women talking about a very timely topic, which is coping through crisis. And that should be on your screen now. You see Deshelle, Sister Nyango, who actually does some of the warm-up exercise classes before our all-staff meetings, and Tamar Drawn. Please be sure to join us again. Thank you so much, Andrea. This has been wonderful.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and continued luck and success in your tenure as the lead of the YWCA.
Thank you so much. And I wish the same for you. And
Thank you.
It's my absolute pleasure to serve on that authority with you. So
thank you.
I look forward to our continued good work. And to everyone, stay safe, reopen safely.
Yes.
And remember, we're all going to get through this together.
Together.
We're unlimited. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.